Imagine a ruler so powerful he reshaped an empire, yet so ruthless his own son wasn't safe from his wrath. Picture a man who modernized a nation but left a trail of screams in his wake. What if I told you Peter the Great, the Tsar who built Russia's future, was also behind some of the most chilling tortures in history? In the next half hour, you'll uncover the dark side of a man whose ambition knew no limits, the methods he used to silence his enemies, and the shocking truth about what happened to those who dared defy him. Stick around, because this isn't just a history lesson. It's a journey into the heart of fear itself. Let's dive in. Peter the Great, born in 1672, was no ordinary monarch. Towering over 6 feet tall with a temper as fierce as his vision, he dragged Russia from medieval shadows into the modern world. He built a navy, reformed the army, and turned St. Petersburg into a glittering capital. But beneath the grandeur there was a cost, a human cost. Peter's reign wasn't just about progress, it was about control, and he wielded it with an iron fist. To understand the tortures he unleashed, we need to step into his world, a place where loyalty was demanded and betrayal was met with unimaginable suffering. Russia in the late 17th century was a land of contrasts. Nobles lived in opulence, while peasants toiled in misery. The Orthodox Church held sway, resisting change, and the old aristocracy, the boyars, clung to their power. Peter, barely out of his teens when he took the throne, saw a nation stuck in time. He wanted Russia to rival Europe's great powers, but to do that, he needed absolute obedience. Dissent wasn't just a challenge, it was a personal insult. And Peter didn't negotiate with insults, he crushed them. Let's start with the Streltsy, the elite guard of Moscow. In 1698, these soldiers, loyal to tradition, rebelled against Peter's reforms. They wanted the old Russia back, free from Western influence. Peter was abroad, studying shipbuilding, in Europe when word reached him. His response was swift and merciless. He returned to Moscow, and what followed wasn't just punishment, it was a spectacle of terror. Over 1,200 Streltsy were rounded up. Peter didn't delegate this task. He personally oversaw the interrogations, and the methods were gruesome. Interrogations in Peter's Russia weren't about truth, they were about breaking the spirit. The knout, a leather whip studded with metal, was a favorite tool. Victims were stripped, tied to a post, and lashed until their backs were raw. Some endured hundreds of strokes, their flesh torn to ribbons. Peter, often present, watched with a cold intensity. He believed pain revealed loyalty, or its absence. Those who confessed faced execution, but not quickly. Beheadings were common, and Peter himself took up the axe, reportedly executing dozens in a single day. For others, the punishment was slower, broken on the wheel, where limbs were shattered with iron bars, leaving the victim to die in agony. But the Streltsy uprising wasn't just about punishment, it was a message. Peter ordered the executions in Moscow's Red Square, where crowds gathered, some in horror, others in awe. Bodies were left hanging for months, a grim reminder of the Tsar's power. The message was clear: defy me and this is your fate. For Americans watching, think of this as a public spectacle on the scale of a Super Bowl halftime show, but instead of music, it was a display of raw, unyielding authority. Why was Peter so brutal? To answer that, we need to look at his early life. As a child, he witnessed betrayal firsthand. At 10, he saw his family's allies slaughtered by mutinous guards during a power struggle. The memory of blood on the Kremlin steps never left him. That trauma shaped a man who trusted few and feared rebellion above all. Every act of defiance was a reminder of that childhood terror, and he met it with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. Let's move to another chilling episode, the treatment of the Old Believers. These were devout Orthodox Christians who rejected Peter's religious reforms. They clung to ancient rituals, seeing Peter's changes as heresy. To Peter, their resistance wasn't just spiritual, it was a direct challenge to his authority. He responded with a campaign of persecution that left thousands dead. Old believers were hunted, their villages burned. Those captured faced torture designed to humiliate as much as harm. Some were branded with hot irons, their flesh seared with the Tsar's insignia. Others had their tongues cut out to silence their prayers. Peter didn't just want them dead, he wanted their faith erased. This wasn't random cruelty. Peter saw himself as Russia's savior, dragging it into a new era. The old believers, like the Streltsy, represented the past he despised. His tortures were calculated, meant to deter and dominate. Yet, there's a paradox here. Peter was a man of contradictions. He admired European enlightenment but ruled with medieval brutality. He wept at executions, yet ordered them without hesitation. For an American audience, it's like imagining a president who champions democracy while enforcing martial law. The duality is jarring, but it's key to understanding his reign. Now let's turn to the darkest chapter, the torture of Peter's own son, Alexei. This is where the Tsar's cruelty hits closest to home. Alexei, born in 1690, was Peter's heir, but the two couldn't have been more different. Peter was a whirlwind of energy, obsessed with progress. Alexei was introspective, drawn to tradition and the church. He resented his father's relentless demands and fled to Austria in 1716, seeking refuge. For Peter, this wasn't just betrayal. It was personal. He lured Alexei back with promises of forgiveness, but what awaited was far from mercy. Alexei's interrogation was a masterclass in psychological and physical torment. Locked in a fortress, he faced relentless questioning. Peter, desperate to uncover a conspiracy, ordered the knout. Alexei, frail and unaccustomed to pain, broke, quickly, confessing to vague plots against his father. But Peter wasn't satisfied. He demanded names, details, anything to justify his paranoia. The torture escalated. Hot irons, the rack, where limbs were stretched until joints popped. Alexei's screams echoed through the fortress, but Peter remained unmoved. In 1718, Alexei died, likely from his injuries, though some whispered Peter ordered his death. The official story? A sudden illness. The truth? A father's wrath consumed his son. This tragedy shocked Europe. Monarchs were ruthless, but to destroy your own heir. It was unthinkable. For Americans, think of a founding father turning on his child with such venom. It's a betrayal of the family bond that resonates across centuries. Yet Peter's defenders argued Alexei was a threat, a symbol of resistance who could undo his father's reforms. Was Peter protecting his legacy, or was he a tyrant consumed by control? The answer lies in the grey space between ambition and obsession. Let's step back and explore the tools of Peter's terror. Beyond the knout and the wheel, he employed psychological tactics that were ahead of his time. Isolation was a favorite, locking prisoners in dark, freezing cells for weeks, breaking their will without a single lash. Public humiliation was another. Nobles who defied him were forced to shave their beards, a symbol of status, in front of jeering crowds. These weren't just punishments, they were performances, designed to cement Peter's dominance. He understood the power of fear as a political weapon, a lesson that resonates in modern authoritarian regimes. But Peter's cruelty wasn't without context. Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries was no stranger to violence. England's bloody assizes saw rebels drawn and quartered. France's Louis XIV crushed dissent with equal fervor. Peter's methods, while extreme, were part of a broader pattern. What set him apart was scale and spectacle. He didn't just punish, he made sure the world knew. His tortures were as much about propaganda as pain, a way to project strength to allies and enemies alike. Let's consider the impact on Russia. Peter's reign transformed the nation, but at what cost? His reforms, military, cultural, economic, laid the foundation for a modern state. Yet, the fear he instilled lingered. Peasants whispered of the Tsar's wrath, and nobles learned to obey without question. The tortures, while effective in silencing dissent, bred resentment. Some historians argue this fear stifled creativity, creating a culture of compliance that haunted Russia for centuries. Others say it was necessary, that without Peter's iron hand, Russia would have fractured. It's a debate that echoes in America today. How much control is too much, and what's the price of progress? Now let's humanize this story. Imagine a peasant named Ivan, living in a village outside Moscow. He's heard of the Tsar's reforms, new taxes, forced labor for St. Petersburg's construction. One day soldiers arrive, accusing his brother of sheltering old believers. Ivan watches as his brother is dragged away, branded and sent to a labor camp. The village falls silent, fear replacing gossip. Ivan never speaks out, but the anger festers. This was the reality for thousands, ordinary lives caught in Peter's grand vision. For an American audience, it's a reminder of the human toll behind every empire, from Rome to the modern day. Peter's legacy is complex. He's celebrated as Russia's modernizer, the man who built a navy and opened trade with the West. Statues of him stand in St. Petersburg, and his name graces history books. But the screams of the Streltsy, the old believers, and Alexei linger in the shadows. His tortures weren't just acts of cruelty. They were tools of transformation, wielded by a man who saw himself as both savior and judge. To understand Peter is to grapple with a question: can progress justify pain? It's a question that resonates in boardrooms and battlefields today. As we near the end, let's reflect on what we've uncovered. Peter the Great wasn't a cartoonish villain. He was a visionary with a dark side, a man who loved his country but ruled it with fear. The Streltsy executions showed his resolve. The old believer's persecution, his intolerance, and Alexei's death, his personal tragedy. Each act of cruelty was a brick in the foundation of modern Russia, but those bricks were stained with blood. For Americans, it's a story that challenges the myth of the heroic leader, reminding us that greatness often comes at a cost. So what can we take from this? First, question the price of progress. Peter's reforms changed Russia, but they crushed countless lives. Next time you hear of a bold new policy or a charismatic leader, ask, who pays the price? Second, think about power. Peter's tortures were about control, but control built on fear is fragile. True strength lies in trust, not terror. Finally, share this story. History isn't just dates and names, it's a mirror for our own time. If Peter's tale struck a chord, comment below. Tell me what shocked you most. Was it Alexei's fate, the Streltsy's suffering, or something else? Hit that like button if you learned something new, and subscribe for more dives into history's darkest corners. You don't want to miss what's next. Speaking of what's next, our journey into history's shadows continues. Up next, we'll uncover the public execution that became a bloodbath, a story of chaos and consequences that shook a nation. Trust me, you won't believe how it unfolds. Click that bell icon so you don't miss it, and let's keep exploring the past together. See you in the next video.